everybody. Welcome in. The Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. On this Monday, the 27th of March. Hope you had a great weekend. I did. We're ready to kick off this Monday talking about what's going on with Michigan, the latest in what's going on in Michigan sports. That's what we do when we turn on the camera and open the mics at 1 o'clock weekdays. And today, being no different, able to look back on the weekend, and it was a nice weekend if you're a Michigan fan, and you are. And it started with the news with Jadyn Davis putting out his top 5 and then declaring that coming up this Friday, he was going to make an announcement on where he's going to attend college. We will cover that from head to toe coming up shortly. Also, you could say this is game week because it is coming up on Saturday. Michigan will have their mostly annual spring game that will take place at the Big House at 3:30, a game that I plan on going to. I'll give you my thoughts here on a Monday on game spring week coming up. But we'll start with the big news with Michigan hockey as they advance to the Frozen Four. How about that? Give it up to Brandon Naurato and company, Billy McCall, to the rest of the Michigan hockey staff for being able to get to the Frozen Four. That's no small task, even though they did get there last year, they've been there before. They've been to the most Frozen Fours, but getting there, as you know, when you watch this tournament, it gets in a one and done. These game 7 type situations, it's crazy. Last night being no different for Michigan, as they were able to come from behind on a feisty Penn State team and then get the game into overtime and then win it less than a minute in. Let's recap a little bit on Michigan hockey and just what it means here for the Wolverines. They expanded the tournament, I think, to 16. Michigan has not made back-to-back tournaments since they expanded it to 16 teams. You can go back to the beginning of this century, the 2001, 2002, 2003 seasons to see where Michigan was last able to go a back-to-back. They extended after 2003 is when they went to 16. So this is the first time that Michigan's been able to do that, go back-to-back. And they do it if you follow the team, the coaching transition this year, and their head coach is got the interim tag. I think this would be a good week to just go ahead and snatch that off the door. You know that he's going to be staying around. Why not do it this week? But if you watched that game last night, it was Mackie Samoskevich, 52 seconds into overtime, the 21 first-round pick of the Carolina Hurricanes, who this was going from left to right, and a little wicked wrist shot found the back of the net in overtime. So Michigan could skate away with a 2-1 lead. Good job by Portello in the third period. If you're going to be honest, if you watched that game last night, Penn State was carrying the play, and they had the more dangerous chances in overtime. You say, they were the better team. I'm sorry, in the third period, they had more chances, and you could say they were the better team. They had the better chances. There was a big fat turnover. One that the last thing you'd want to do is commit a turnover, to essentially give the Penn State right winger a breakaway. But that's what happened. He came in and blasted one, and Portillo was able to, stand tall there. There was another one. There was a scrum. This was in the third period where all players are like right out in front of the net, and you don't see the puck. You just see all these players and all these, the sticks and everything out there. And then you see Portello go down, and he ends up, making the save. But when they sift through it on like a slow-mo, There's nothing but skates and sticks down there. And the guy from Penn State gets a pretty good shot, like right there. He's pretty much point blank. And somehow Portello was able to see through all of the different guys that were there, skaters. His own team was able to locate that puck and make the save. And I don't care any Frozen Four teams, anybody that advances in a tournament like that, you're going to need timely saves by your goaltender. Michigan was able to get that, and now they get back to the Frozen Four, and there's nothing more exciting in sports really than the Frozen Four, the tournament, and now the actual Frozen Four. Michigan will take on Quinnipiac coming up on April the 6th. That is a Thursday. You find out that Michigan doesn't get that early game. I like it this way, although, you're watching 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a Frozen Four game. I think that was the situation last year. This year, Michigan gets the nightcap, so it'll be an 8:30 face-off scheduled. If, the other one could go, you know how it works. But Quinnipiac and Michigan on April the 6th at 8:30. So that's good. It has been it was awesome for Michigan. Be able to get back in there, and there it is. I asked you the question in general here. You could go specifically today. Just everything that is surrounding Michigan football. I have the question for you. How are you feeling about Michigan football today? I put that question out there for you. And Tyler answered the question. He says it feels great to be a fan of the team right now. And you can understand that. Tyler saying that because right now things are going really well with Michigan. We are presented by Rivals.com. And if you did not know, we're a part of the Maize and Blue Review. And if you want to, around the holidays, we're telling people it's great for that Michigan fan in your life. It's great for you if you want to know what's going on with Michigan all the time, up to speed, day and night, recruiting, football, basketball, what's going on with hockey, Olympic sports. It's, when the seasons are going on, everybody's like, okay, I kind of get it, but it's the off-season pursuit of all of this that it just keeps going and it never rests. You can be a part of it all by joining the Maize and Blue Review today. Go to michigan.rivals.com. You buy a month and you get 4 free. That's a great deal. Full access today by using the promo code UMSpring23. That is UMSpring23. That is something that you definitely should be taking advantage of. And we've got this news with Jadyn Davis. I think everybody knows this. He picked his top 5 on Friday. I made my prediction on the top 5. I missed it. I got 4 of the 5. I didn't have Tennessee in there. I had Georgia instead. It ends up being Michigan, North Carolina, Clemson, Ohio State, and Tennessee for Jadyn Davis. But we all think that it is going to be Michigan for Jadyn Davis. Let's take some feedback and see where the people are at. I've got the Rivals.com national recruiting director just an hour or two ago made a bunch of predictions about where all the top uncommitted quarterbacks are going to go in the country. We will bring that to you in a minute. Scott pointing out about the basketball tournament that he's going to poll for San Diego State and former Michigan assistant basketball coach Brian Dutcher. Well, Dutch got the heavy connection to the state of Michigan and to the University of Michigan. Longtime assistant for Steve Fisher in Ann Arbor. Before Dutch was in Ann Arbor, he hails from Alpena, which if you're familiar with the state of Michigan, if there's Saginaw Bay, you just keep going up. And there's Alpena up there close to the top. And I played a basketball game in Alpena one time. Alpena, right there on the water and way up north. Couldn't be, there could be. It's a pretty stark contrast when you're talking about Alpena to San Diego. I've been to both places, and San Diego, woo! And for Dutcher to be able to be there, I went to a Rose Bowl, and then the next day, so I was in San Diego State, but the campus was closed. But we had walked through it, went to see the baseball stadium, everything else. Beautiful campus. So yeah, out of the teams that are left, I could see that with the connection with Brian Dutcher. I get that. Tyler making a prediction about Michigan going 12-0 with the toughest game being at Minnesota and at Penn State. Oh, what are they? You got Nebraska, Minnesota, Michigan State, and Penn State, and Maryland. Those are the ones. So you are saying that you think Minnesota, Nebraska, Minnesota. I'll buy the Penn State. I think Penn State, if I had to say which was going to be the toughest one. Scott making a point about spring football, saying he's looking for Darius Clemens and Tyler Morris to shake up the wide receiver room this fall. Yeah, I think one of those guys, they're going to be. I think we've seen a little bit from both of them. Clemens physically looks like he was ready to go during the spring game last year. Looked like, he could have competed, caught that touchdown. Morris, who was coming off an injury in high school, came on late, had the big third down catch against Illinois. Yeah, I could see it as well. I think that is a prediction everybody can get behind. Eddie was excited and liked the hockey game. I don't know how it was a great hockey game. It really was. Scott pointing out you got a hockey national title possibly this year, a football national title next year, and then why not line it up for a basketball national title the year after that? How about that? 1, 2, 3. That would be nice. That would be really nice. Eddie looking forward to the 27th Frozen Four and wanting a 10th title. Let's see. We've got Robert, who's putting some percentages out there. He's got a new Quinnipiac poll that gives Michigan a 58% chance of winning the Frozen Four. Well, if Quinnipiac is putting out a poll and they think Michigan has a 58% chance, then Michigan's got a pretty good chance. If the opponent is thinking that. Portillo was awesome last night. Scott says, you would not think that Penn State would be good in hockey. Do they recruit some Canadian kids? I'd say they're relatively new to hockey, but you think about where Pennsylvania, is located and in relation, and, is it a hockey hotbed? Like, I don't know, the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, those are big time. They're not original sixes, but those are big time, big time fan bases when we talk about the Flyers and the Penguins. When they just put this thing together, the Big Ten, I remember, Penn State for the longest time had club hockey. And I had a friend of mine who played club hockey at Eastern, and he would talk about going to Illinois and talk about going to Penn State and playing in these arenas, and just how many people would be there. And you might not think about, I don't know what makes a good hockey state or hockey city or hockey college. I mean, I think northern climate, I think surrounding area. Do you have people that enjoy the sport? All those things. It fits for for Penn State in a lot of ways. What you're looking at there, and they've been good for a couple of years. That was a very good win for Michigan. Eddie, if it would be Michigan and Minnesota. Those are the best two teams that I have seen all year long. And, of course, Michigan was able to beat Minnesota for the Big Ten title. So there you go. That would be good. Andres has felt the best about Michigan football right now that he's felt in his life. He's spending this offseason teaching Buckeyes the error of their ways and converting them from the bad guys. Well, I think don't worry about those guys. Michigan doesn't need any more fans. If you're an Ohio State fan, you should stay an Ohio State fan. But, Andres, the point about this being the best where Michigan football is at right now, it really just depends how old you are. If you go back to the 70s and you can remember Michigan, it felt like, even though they didn't win a championship until 97, it always felt like they were in play. They always felt like they were a play or two away, that it felt like they were elite, and they were pretty damn close to it. But, when you don't have the title, that's always going to, in a lot of people's minds. And, I get the argument, like it's going to pull you back from, saying that you're, ultimately, the elite of elite, going all the way through from the U, and, you had Nebraska, and then when Michigan finally did it, but then, they did fall back. But coming back in these last 2 years, and when you're up there and you're just missing the championship, but you get everything else, you're feeling pretty good up till the 2000s and even 2006, and then the Rodriguez and the Hoke years were lean, and then not being able to beat Ohio State. It was a long time where you were suffering. You suffered as a Michigan fan. You were way up here, and then you were down a little bit, and then it was really pulled down where it was tough. There was about 10 years in there, certainly from 2007. But you want to say, I'll say 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 9 years. 9 tough years. And one of those years, maybe even 2 of them, were okay. The pour some sugar on me year, and I was at Hoke's first year. That wasn't all that bad, but it was tough to have them. And then the way that it was looking with Jim Harbaugh to rescue the program, and then it looked like he was not going to be able to do it, and then he did. And so to have him pull off what he did the last 2 years, it really is. It's in a great spot. Robert pointing out that the Florida Atlantic head coach Dusty May started his career as an assistant coach at EMU. I did not know that, Robert. I didn't know too much about Florida Atlantic. I was just looking today. Somebody posted a picture of their campus, and guess what? It's by the Atlantic Ocean, Florida Atlantic, in Boca. I guess it's Raton. It looked pretty nice. They had an aerial view, and then they had the view of the front of the campus with all the palm trees. And I thought, wow, man, that's pretty nice. And I know I haven't been on the campus of the U myself, but I have heard just how nice the campus is at Coral Gables. And then you got Florida Atlantic. And I just talked about being out at San Diego State. There's got to be 3 of the nicest campus areas, I guess up and down California, where, Washington's pretty good. Oh, if you're talking about water and ocean front and all that, pretty good. Of course, I'm just talking about the palm trees and the weather, all 3 of those places. But there's some information I did not know about Florida Atlantic. Okay. Friday cannot get here soon enough. Heard from some insiders. April will be a fun recruiting month. You heard from some insiders, did you, Tyler? Well, that's what I like. JP, it's good to see you on here on this Monday. Let's see what Kent is saying. I don't mean to be sizist, but should we really be getting that excited about a 6-foot-tall quarterback outside of the recruiting win of it all? Well, I would say yes. I would say let's look at some. Let's see how the game is going, and just let's look at some of the quarterbacks over the last few years that have had success that are around 6 feet tall. When you think about Jadyn Davis and his game, who comes to mind? Well, Bryce Young measured out at 5'10" and a half, the quarterback at Alabama. I know Alabama did not win the championship last year, but the year before, and sitting there with Bryce Young, he's shorter than Jadyn Davis. And sure enough, you've had some of these quarterbacks like Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, who are around 6 feet tall, have fabulous success in college, but then have gone on. And even though the Cardinals gave the money to Arizona, that didn't look like a very smart move for them. And Mayfield, I don't know, Mayfield's had a lot of injuries, but I don't know, is it because of his size? Maybe. But we're talking about those guys at the pros. But when you think about those guys at the college level, they were tremendous. If you were asking me, do I think, is it more of a concern in the pros or college? Pros. So I'm not as hung up on it. Do I like 6'2", 6'3" quarterbacks? Yeah, when you're coming down to it, in every sport, there's always a measurable where you're like, yeah, that's prototypical size, or if that's exactly what you want. But there's also a lot of other things that go into it. So no, that's a long ways around to me saying that I'm not going to be worried. Now, if I get out there like, Cade McNamara, the way that he threw the ball, he kind of shot the ball out. He had I don't want to say it was a weird, but it was a little bit sidearm or kind of shot it out there. And he had a lot of passes batted down. And it was I don't know, a lot. It was at least something to talk about. Like, hey, should he improve his mechanics? Should the whatever his launch angle, but launch point, is that something that they could have worked on? Because he did have this the sidearm thing, which I don't know, made him like 5'8" in the pocket. And he was 6'2" or 6'1" or whatever else. So let's wait and see what Davis looks like when he's back there. Let's see if he's going to get passes batted down. If those are the sort of things, then maybe that you could look at it and say, okay, that is something. But I get what you're saying. I mean, we get it, but I'm going to say not yet when it comes down to it. So we'll see. Tyler saying the talent's there. He will shine. Robert giving us some background on Dutch. Dutch's dad, Jim, a Michigan grad and a head coach at EMU when George Gervin went there. And he was also an assistant coach at Michigan. And there you go. All right in the state. Yeah, so I'm with you, with the connection to the state of Michigan and Dutch. There were a lot of people questioning, like, hey, why didn't Michigan, keep Dutcher when, Steve Fisher was leaving? And if you were around during that time, whether it was fair or unfair to Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher and others, they were there when the Ed Martin situation was happening at Michigan. And so what happened, if you were a coach there, and to give you a little brief playback of how things were working back then, Ed Martin was giving local basketball players thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He thought maybe to, sure, he was being friendly. Yeah, he liked the kids, but also he was giving them to big time players in the hope that they would wash the money of his and be able to get it back to him. And, so money laundering is what he was doing. And he wasn't just giving it to Michigan players. He was giving it to guys like Willie Burton, who ended up and guys that were going out to Syracuse. And it just so happened that Michigan got a little bit screwed because of their proximity towards Detroit. Like they just had a lot of ball players and Detroit and a lot of that money. And when it came down with Fisher, and they said, well, what about this Ed Martin guy who's giving thousands of dollars to these players? Fisher's like, I don't know what's going on. And that's not a good defense. Like, and it ended up being Dutcher's defense too. At the end, it kept happening. It wasn't just this player or that player. You know, he had a laundry list of Mo Taylor, of Chris Webber. You know, so you had the list, and in the end, it even got the coach that they ended up keeping around because Lewis Bullock ended up taking money. The whole point about that is that it was a time where you just couldn't, because the defense was, we didn't know about it, and Michigan ended up was trying to, you know, not get in trouble with the NCAA, and ultimately they ended up going on de facto probation, but it would have been difficult to keep Dutcher because he was right there and should have, whether he should have or could have known all of that and done anything about it. You know, it's up to your own, but you know, it's not like he got some raw deal. It's, you know, he was able to go somewhere else. And, you know, the other school wasn't like, you know, he's some dirty coach. It was just a bad time for him. That's why he couldn't come back to Michigan. But there were a lot of people like, Michigan should have hired him. There was no way. Like, if you were around at that point, that was not happening. So that was never working. So let's see. Lyle indicating that San Diego State has the best Mexican food. I believe you. Let's see. Jason says they list Bryce Young at 6 feet, leaving a gas station in heels in Tuscaloosa. Everybody bringing up the Bryce Young comparison. Victor saying that Cade was originally a baseball player, which is where the sidearm came from. Good if you know how to use it in improvising situations like Mahomes. Cade did control it and did not improvise. Yeah, well, and depending on how tall you are, I mean, if you're throwing from you're 6 feet tall, depending on where it at in your shoulders, wherever that release point is, it's going to be a lot different if you're shooting it out of there, you know, from the side. I mentioned Adam Gorney, and he is the national recruiting director from Rivals. Just a little while ago, Gorney put out his predictions on where the top 10 uncommitted quarterbacks will land. And let's see, because Jadyn Davis falls under the category of one of the 10 non-committed top quarterbacks. So let's see where Gorney goes. Adam Gorney. Here's Dylan Raiola, and he's picking Georgia for Raiola. All right, Jadyn Davis. There he is, 6 feet tall, Providence Day, North Carolina. Number 1 in the state of North Carolina, number 3 quarterback in the country. He is a top 10 overall player. Here's what Gorney had to say about Davis. In recent days, Davis released his top 5. Michigan, Ohio State, Clemson, North Carolina, and Tennessee. The 5-star quarterback from Charlotte, North Carolina, Providence Day, visited all of those programs and developed great relationships. While all of them have a shot, it's the Wolverines that could be way ahead here. In January, Davis wanted to make a decision soon, and he was closely watching whether Coach Jim Harbaugh would stay or return to the NFL. He stayed in Ann Arbor, and it would be a stunner at this point if Davis picks anywhere other than Michigan on March 31st. Prediction? Michigan. Michigan got the last visit. Michigan has been right there as the leader all along. It would be a shock if it was anybody except Michigan. I think we all understand that. Friday is the day, and the announcement is going to be at 1:30. That's perfect. We will be on. And we got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 days. We'll be sitting right here, and we will go live and take that prediction to see where Jadyn Davis goes. This has been, out of all the photos that I see in and around in the internet, this is one from Davis where he was wearing his Michigan shorts, he had the Michigan cleats, and he had the Michigan towel. And, here he is throwing the football. He looks pretty good there. I don't know, like physically, they're talking about 6 feet tall, but his arms look bigger than what you would even think about as a quarterback. This dude looks more like I don't know, like he could be a well-built 2 guard or point guard out there. And it could just be way this photo's got him flexing or whatever else, but feeling pretty good about Jadyn Davis and where he's ultimately going to end up picking. And that's Michigan. All right, let's look to the forecast. And I've got a forecast in on Jadyn Davis. I've had it there for a while. And that forecast is Michigan. I'm picking Jadyn Davis to go to Michigan as well. That's just where I'm sitting. Now on to the spring game taking place this Saturday, April the 1st, 3 o'clock. It is going to be on the Big Ten Network. I plan on going down to the spring game and sitting in the stands. So I got another forecast for you. I looked right before the show. This Saturday, April the 1st, 48 degrees, a high. And I would think at around 3 o'clock, that's about when you get the high. So we're going to get around 48 degrees, but a 49% chance of rain. Now, since we're sitting here and it's Monday, all right, we're going to look at the extended forecast. But if you look like the day before, it's going to be a lot warmer, but a lot rainier. And if you look at the next day, it's going to be just a little bit warmer and a lot less rainier. What I'm saying is that I'm hoping for 50 degrees and partly sunny skies. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I would take. A little rain, not going to hurt anybody. Like it that way. I'd like it to be, if I could, I'd take 55 and sunny. Are you kidding me? I'd be sitting out there. It would be, it would be glorious. It's going to be pretty cool anyways. And 50 degrees I can handle. I make it sound like, because I'm a pretty a literal fair weather fan. I used to have a rule with baseball, non-playoff, that I would not go to a baseball game unless it was over 70 degrees. I used to say that all the time. And then, you get in some situations, some free tickets, and you get down there and I'm looking, I'm like, I'm breaking my rule here. It's, it's 65 degrees. Well, you go down there and it's 65 degrees and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I need to change my policy. This is pretty nice, I have to admit. And, it kind of went down 60. And then it was, I don't know why I was down there with my wife and it wasn't opening day. But it was, I think I know why, because we had tickets also to go up into the Tiger Club, but we started out down in the stadium, and I said, well, let's see what it's going to be like, because it was in the 50s, and I'm down there, and I'm like thinking, yeah, this is why I have my policy, and then it started snowing, but we were able to go up into the club, and it ended up working out. All of that, I am a fair weather fan, like football fans, they'll brave, 10 below, go down and watch Michigan. So me complaining a little bit about some possible rain when it's going to be around 50 degrees, I'll admit, I could take a little blowback from people if you wanted to call me names about fretting over 50 degrees, but I do it. I am a fair weather fan. You get a little spoiled. I'm going to say most of the people, when you get in the, I think, let's say I get rich people, or I don't know if they're rich people that have that, have the suites. That's essentially like when you go up into the press box. It takes a game or two, or even a whole season when you start going into the press box when you've just gone to games as a fan. You go up there, you're not cheering, you're generally not with anybody. I mean, although you get to know people that are up there, you're by yourself and you're there to work. So it's way different sitting up in a press box. But the climate control is something that you get accustomed to. You know, you walk up there, you take your jacket off and you hang it out. You watch the game no matter how cold it is, in a short sleeve shirt. It's pretty nice. And then after a year or two, 25 years, you get used to it. There have been a couple times when the Tigers, I remember they made the World Series in 2006. They had an auxiliary, excuse me, press box, and they had it out there in right field. It's like, hey, who cares? It's the World Series. The Tigers played in the World. Yeah, it was freezing. We're out there, everybody. It was pretty cold, but it was the World Series. And then the next year or the year after that, they played the A's, and they had another auxiliary press box. This wasn't the World Series. They had this one like set up out in left field below the scoreboard, and the wind was kind of blow. It felt like it was 20 below out there watching a baseball game. But, it was the postseason. And some of the games, I can recall back when Ray Fisher, where the Michigan baseball team plays, starting out a broadcast career and doing some play-by-play for Michigan baseball. It's a nice press box now. They have enclosed seating and heat and everything. Back then, they had you sat outside. They had a little bit of a press box going on, but not enough of what we were doing. We were sitting outside. Winter boots, gloves, hats, and just sitting there. There was nothing any colder than that. One other time, it was the opening night for the Pistons. We didn't have these. This is early. It's probably 2007 or 8. I'd guess 2008. Opening night for the Pistons, and we didn't have the radio rights. So the guys that held the radio rights, this AM station, they did not want us inside the basketball arena, and yet we were still going to be there, for opening night. So they had us outside in the parking lot, at the setup. And I'm not saying it was below 20 degrees, but I had a wool blanket. And when you're just sitting there and you can't move it, you have to talk. It felt like it was 20 below. I'm going to make it no matter what. Unless it dips down to like below 32. Wind chill below 15. But there's nothing that says that. So it doesn't matter. Jason with a question. We'll take some questions here. I've got a few minutes. Fire some questions. I'll answer them. JP says, did you ever get a chance to watch the Pistons play in the Silverdome? And the answer to that question is yes. I watched the Pistons play the 1989 finals at the Silverdome. I went down there and I was sitting in the upper deck. I think it's the largest. I'd have to look, but maybe the Spurs did something these last couple of years to knock the attendance record out. But for the longest time, the biggest attendance record was the Silverdome for the Lakers. You could pay it was $5, and you could go to the game. Although, you're way up in the upper deck, you could barely see anything. But I went to the Silverdome before that. I saw Dr. J at the Silverdome against the Pistons. So, yeah, I would see him. And then the roof gave in the one year that the Pistons were in the playoffs, and the first round playoff series was against Boston at the Joe Louis Arena. And I had some of the best tickets up to that point for Pistons Celtics. It was a weird situation because I had liked the Pistons and they weren't really getting into the playoffs. But the Boston was Boston then. And then when they played, they were like my second team, but I was rooting against Boston. It was like the first time you had to say, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? That happened. So, yes, I did see them there. Let's see what others are saying. Roderick, everybody relax. Davis will commit Friday and the floodgates will open. Just watch. Yeah, I feel like that is right. I agree with that, Roderick. Andre's getting on me about being a meteorologist now. Meteorologist. Yeah, that's coming right off my phone. I'm just reading the temps. That's it. Kent calling me fair weather 50th. I got to take that. Tyler, no truer sentence has been put out there. I'm just hoping that the Pistons can get the #1 pick in the NBA draft. I agree. Wembanyama. I mean, they've got the worst record right now, so they're doing all they can. As there's just a couple games remaining, so that's the best that they can do. I want Wembanyama myself, but also the kid Scoot or the assessor, Miller, Brandon Miller from Alabama. Those three guys, any of those three guys. And you remember sometimes getting the booby prize or the #2 pick ends up working out fine. It did when, it was Zion Williamson, John Morant, Memphis had #2. Back in the day when Kevin Durant was playing for Texas and came out, Greg Oden was the selection at #1. There was a little bit of talk about maybe you should take Durant. They didn't, and OKC did. So sometimes that #2 pick works out pretty good. But, I want #1 myself. I've seen enough of Wembanyama to be super intrigued and want him in Detroit. It would be exciting. Any thoughts on the Ohio quarterback battle? Got to know what the enemy's up to. Yeah, well, I'll just wait and see, what they come up with. I mean, I have not watched any spring game. I don't pay. I know you're telling me it's know what the enemy's up to. I watch Ohio State, like when they hit the field, I'll watch them play, but I don't know about, got to know what the enemy's up to. Let's see. I want to see what they look like in a game. I know they got 2 guys, and that's it. Do I want to know what they're saying in Columbus behind, the closed doors or some kind of intel from? Not really. I don't. I mean, maybe you do. I mean, you're saying right here, you got to know what the enemy's up to. That's not really me. I don't care what Ohio State's up to. I watch them play football. JP went and seen the Pistons at the Silverdome in '88. WrestleMania too. People still talk about that WrestleMania. That time, they love that. Who's your second pro football team? Well, growing up, OT, I liked the Lions, but the Lions were never in the playoffs. On my street in Detroit, you either like the Steelers or you like the Cowboys. I like the Cowboys. Unfortunately for me, I don't remember '77 when the Cowboys. I think they won the Super Bowl with Starbuck. I don't really remember that. The first memory I really have, but I was a big Cowboy fan. I knew that was '78, and they lost to the Steelers in the Super Bowl. And for about 10 years, if you would have said, from '78 to, '87, who's your favorite football team? I would say Michigan, the Lions, and the Cowboys. I really liked the Cowboys, but then Jerry Jones took over and he fired Tom Landry. And I said, I hate the Cowboys and I'm swearing them off. And I tried to do that a little bit, except, you'd get down there at Thanksgiving, you'd have Pat Summerall and John Madden, and it'd be the Cowboys playing, and I'd be like, oh, this is tough. And then the Cowboys, after that, started winning a lot. And I slowly went from 1987 to now with fantasy football. I could have never predicted. I remember when Terrell Owens, he took the football and he went out to the middle of the field at Dallas and he put the ball, spiked the ball right in the 50, right down the 50. And I thought, oh, this guy, he's the worst ever. San Francisco, what a jerk. And now I like, fantasy football, whoever's on my team, like I'll have guys from San Francisco. I'll have guys from Green Bay. If I would have told myself that in the 70s and 80s, I'd have said, no, I don't see that. I'll never like any of those guys. I'll never like any of those teams. So the Cowboys there for a second, but it's the Lions, and then whoever my keepers on my fantasy team are, it should be Jonathan Taylor and CeeDee Lamb, but I traded both of those guys away in a weak moment at the end of the season. And now my favorite, I've got Christian Watson from the Packers. So I really like him. And I've got Drake London from the Falcons. I need some new guys. I need some new teams. Andres, if I'd have said the Steelers, I was unsubscribing. Yeah, I'm not a Steelers fan. I'm a fan of the Lions. That's it. That's where I'm at. All right, this is about going to do it, but look at now, Shane is getting in. As soon as I thought, hey, the show's about over, Shane shows up. And he just picked up his finals tickets for Michigan hockey, 2 natties in the next 10 months. Tampa to Houston. Let's go. Let's go, Blue. See you Friday. Jadyn Davis, welcome to Michigan. Well, Shane, the days of watching Michigan hockey, it reminded me of last night, of watching them play. There's one thing about watching them play in the regular season. There's one thing about watching them play in the Big Ten tournament. There's something else completely other about watching them play in the NCAA tournament. And it is such the building, they were playing on the road last night. When Penn State scored that first goal, I thought, wow, man, this place is going bonkers. I do recall, though, when Michigan, I'd have to look back at the years, they hosted a regional. And they had, I think, it was Colorado State and North Dakota was in there. It was the loudest. The Yost Ice Arena was the loudest it had ever been, and sitting in there. And then I can remember in 96, a friend of mine said, would I go with the Frozen Fours happening? Would I go if Michigan gets to the finals? He's like, I'll drive. And I said, yes, I'm in. So we went to see Michigan take on Colorado College in 96 when they won their first championship in a long time, the first one for Red, and Brendan Morrison in overtime. And it was great. And then I can remember driving back from Cincinnati, all of the cars that were coming back, you could see were a bunch of Michigan fans. You'd see the Michigan plates, or you'd see them inside. Everybody was just honking their horn like the whole way back. I don't remember, I can remember sitting at the game where I was sitting and everything. I don't remember exiting the building or anything. I remember driving home and seeing all these Michigan fans and people hanging out their windows, and it was a cool drive home. Shane, I like it that you take the time out to get to those big-time playoff games, championship games. I'm with you on that. Now we're talking about short quarterbacks. Doug Flutie. Flutie Flakes, a little bit before his time. I just saw the 5'8" player from Kansas State. I really wanted Kansas State to win that game, to be honest, but to see some of the more diminutive guys that are shorter than me. I say I'm 5'10". I'm 5'10". And so you see guys that are shorter than you out there doing and making plays and all that. It's like, wow, this is pretty impressive. So yeah, Jadyn Davis is taller than I am. That's where that came from with Doug Flutie. And Jadyn Davis is taller than Doug Flutie. We're looking forward to Friday. We'll be here tomorrow at 1:00. More Jadyn Davis. We'll dive more into the spring game. what we'll be looking for in that game, and anything else. Do I feel like there's going to be a commitment overnight? I kind of do. I kind of feel like we will have a commitment, maybe a wide receiver to talk about, or an offensive lineman to talk about tomorrow. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you like we do every day, 1 o'clock